Monday Scrum.
Yeah, welcome to Triple M's Monday Scrum, first edition of the new season. Adam Peacock, the host. James Graham is here. Jimmy, how are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. Not much to talk about. Hey, quiet weekend.
Yeah.
Very quiet weekend.
Garbage, a lot of it.
Yeah,
And
no
Brent-
upsets, nothing. Just, standard tipping comp. Yeah, everyone's 8 from 8, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Brent Read,
Hello, mate.
how are you from
Oh,
News
all
Corp?
right, yeah. Going well.
Going all right.
Yeah,
Look at
living
you
the
with your
dream.
little book over
Well,
there,
actually,
and you've got a
I'm not
little
going that
secrets
well.
written down.
Can I tell a little story before we start about one of our colleagues, Michael Chamis?
Is this why you're late today?
This is why I was a bit late today,
Yeah.
because he's building a mansion out west somewhere, and he got the wrong sand delivered to his house. It was the wrong colour sand, apparently. I thought sand was like basically one colour.
Sand.
It was apparently a bit yellow. So anyway, he got the sand from Brookvale, which is near where we are on the northern beaches.
Yeah.
So he rang me this morning about 8 o'clock and said, mate, can you do me a favour? Can you pick up 80 kilograms of sand for me? So I had to detour. And then, just before I came in here, I had to drop the sand off to him. We get to his car, he'd forgotten his keys. Didn't have the keys to put the sand in.
Did you just shovel it in,
I
or
just-
you actually went to a shop and bought it?
No, it was bags of sand.
Ah,
It was 4 20-kilogram
I
bags
thought he
of
just
sand.
thought,
Jimmy.
you
Yeah.
live near the beach. Can
Yeah.
you just maybe he was just after
Well, I
a
could have
free.
done-
Yeah,
actually, I could have done that, couldn't I?
when he said. You put the invoice. He's like, no,
Yeah.
I meant just
James,
actually get it.
this is brilliant, though.
Yeah.
It's showing that we don't live in a fractured media landscape with News Corp and 9 newspapers
No.
getting it. It's a bit like you, say if someone from Wigan back in the day rang you up and said, mate, can you help me out? I need some sand from Blackpool. Can you drive it over to my joint? What would
Well,
you say?
No.
Anyway, but the last time I delivered sand to that buffoon. Chamis.
Fair idea. It might be brought up later in the week in
Should be,
another of our podcast offerings. But we're going to start, guys, with the dawn of the Dolphins. It's hard to look past that as the moment from the weekend. Just extraordinary scenes. Over 30,000, double the crowd that they had back there in 1988 for the dawn of the Broncos, which, manifested itself eventually into great success. But Wayne Bennett at the helm of it all. James Graham, how does he do it?
He knows how to get the best out of his players. He knows how to use a narrative to generate a positive emotional response. And you could see it was an emotional day. You could see the expression on the players' faces at the end of the game when they realised they had won. This was a special day. And I think what Wayne does, he really embraces the underdog tag. So he would have been telling them all week, no one's giving us a chance here, lads. They all think we're a waste of time. He's joking around saying, has anybody seen my mojo? Because apparently I've lost it. No one wants to come here. And
perfect.
You could see that. And, we can look at the result, but for me, what was more impressive is the level of performance, because they go behind, they come back, they make a mistake off the kickoff, they go behind again, and we were there. And I think, like most, we were expecting them to fade away, but they maintained that level of performance. And in fact, if you look back at the game, the Dolphins' worst period was when the Roosters were down to 12 men, which really you should be looking to take advantage of. 13 on 13, they were by far and away the better team. All the Roosters' tries came, I think, against a run of play and had a stroke of luck about it. But the Dolphins were just simply sensational. And, credit to Wayne Bennett and the entire staff and the whole organisation there, because it's a lot of people have put a lot of work behind the scenes into to see this come to fruition. And wow, what a start! Even every 30 odd thousand people inside that ground, all the hundreds of thousands of people watching at home, they surely didn't see that coming.
No one could.
Well, I think people are, it's interesting. I didn't see the game because I was driving to Leichhardt Oval for another game we'll talk about later, which was probably the complete opposite of that game in terms of quality and the result. But I listened on the radio to the guys on Triple M and saw the highlights later. I mean, I read a story where Jared Wallace basically said in the dressing sheds, they thought we wouldn't win a game, or they said we wouldn't win a game. I don't know anyone who said that, who said they wouldn't win a game.
Few people
said they would struggle,
Yeah.
but they're a long way off not struggling. They've won one footy game, and this is the easy game to get up for, right? The first game in your existence, it's the easy game to get up for and be on for. So they're going to have some difficult days ahead, but you can tell when Jared Wallace says something like that, you can tell that Wayne's played the underdog tag all week and given it and said to them, everyone's saying we're not going to win a game. Everyone says we're going to win the spoon. And they've just used that as motivation. And guys like, Felice Kafusi, the Melbourne blokes, they're used to having the world against them down there. They know all about that sort of stuff. And it's no surprise that Felice aimed up on a significant night like this, because they bought those players for the experience and the know-how and their ability to perform in big games.
Well, just to back you up on that, really, I think yesterday's performance and victory had Wayne Bennett's fingerprints all over it, but we had the privilege to speak to Dolphins assistant coach Benny Teo before the game, and he spoke about those Melbourne lads and how they drive the standards in training.
Yep.
So they know about the long course of the season. They know it's not just about this one victory. They know they'll be back to work this week, and it'll be about maintaining those standards now. So, look, I'm not going to say they're going to be top 8, but I think they're going to be a lot more competitive than what people think. And I think that the experience that those, 3 or 4 Melbourne players bring, especially around things like practice and training sessions and what it takes to win, it is so vitally important for them.
You see it across all sport, that the ones that succeed are the ones that have an element, teams I'm talking about, but it happens in individual sports as well, are the ones that, every day is not a new day. Like, those guys have experienced maybe not a day like yesterday. It was a bit indifferent, like a brand new club starting its first ever NRL experience. But you're talking about when they rock up to their main session this week, be it a Wednesday or a Thursday, coming off a big win. Those 4 or 5 guys and Wayne Bennett know exactly what it takes to make sure that you're not still up in the clouds or you're not down in the dumps after the emotional high. What are expectations now for the Phins in the next month? They're limited to the next month.
Next
2 and
month,
2?
probably win win one more, maybe 2 games. I'll tell you where those guys will also be invaluable for a guy like Isaiah Katoa. You imagine a kid like that, 19 years old, learning off Jesse Bromwich, off Kenny Bromwich, off Felice Kafusi. I mean, they'll be invaluable for a kid like that to keep his feet in the ground. But I think if they end the month 2 and 2, I reckon they've done pretty good. If they get to 3 and 1, they've done brilliantly. If they're 4 and 0, well, give Wayne the Dally M Coach of the Year now.
Yeah, look. We spoke about those experienced lads, but I thought some of the players that perhaps we weren't expecting much from really performed well. Jeremy Marshall-King in particular
He was great last year, though, Jimmy, wasn't he? Didn't you think for the
he
Dogs?
was, but he was just he was steady.
He was their player of the year.
Yeah,
The Dogs.
Was he?
He won the player of the year.
Well, okay, I'll take that back then. My memory is failing me, but
But steady was good enough for the
the
Dogs.
independent doctor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Time out of this one. I'm off. Sorry, lads. Look, for me, I thought he was sensational. And, the fact that he got released from the Dogs to bring in Reed Marnie, not much was expected from him. I believe, they still went after Brandon Smith.
Yeah.
So
Harry Grant. They had to go at Harry Grant.
They had to
as well.
go at Harry Grant. So it was clear, he was there. Perhaps to play a role off the bench, but take that away, he was sensational. Brenko Lee as well.
Yeah,
I thought he had a fantastic defensive display up against Joseph Sualihi. He marked him pretty much out the game. There was and obviously Sualihi playing in the centres, it's a new position for him. But I thought the Roosters were getting him some early ball, putting him in positions to really take advantage, and I think we'll see more of that this year. But Brenko Lee was all over him, and those are some of the one-on-one contests that you might miss a little bit on the TV, but we were up in the box and we could see it. It was a fantastic defensive display from Brenko Lee.
So Dolphins next week, Canberra at home, but in Redcliffe, and then Newcastle away, and then round 4. You're already salivating about this one after the Bronx dusted Penrith in round 1, the derby at Suncorp Stadium, you'd imagine, with 52,000 screaming Queenslanders there. By the way, 4 out of 4, the Queenslanders.
Looking good for Billy. Billy and the boys. We're looking good, baby. 3-0.
Bouncing around as well.
Freddie.
So it's obviously never happened before, but 4 from 4. So the Cowboys get it done against Canberra. Gold Coast Titans, we'll get to that one. And then Brisbane as well. Extraordinary weekend for the Queenslanders. And yes, Gordon Tallis. Well, he'll be on cloud 9. Yeah. We'll hear from Gordy through the week.
It's interesting you mentioned Brenko, though. One of the keys for the Dolphins is not how Felice and the Bromwiches and those guys perform. It's how guys like Brenko Lee, Jermaine Asako, those guys, whether they can keep that standard up all year, because they've had patches in their career where they've been good. Guys like Brenko and Jermaine, where they've had good periods, but they tend to have lows as well.
Yep.
That's going to be the issue, whether they can maintain a level of consistency. Don't you think?
Consistency is what we all strive for.
Yeah.
And every player goes through that within a season where, it's very incredibly difficult to maintain that level of performance week in, week out for, a multitude of reasons. But that's the task that they have. And I think, where the Dolphins may come a little bit undone is with their strength and depth. When they pick up injuries, hopefully not suspensions, well, hopefully not injuries either. But that is just a par for the course when it comes to the season of a rugby league.
But I reckon that's across the board now, though. There's not much depth. You look at the Roosters on the weekend.
Talent spread. Yeah.
Well, they had, 3 or 4 players out, and then they lost a cut, and they're off the pace.
Speaking of the Roosters, so, Jimmy, you're a Roosters player. You are counting the minutes, no doubt, to Saturday, 3 o'clock, Saturday afternoon, when they take on the Warriors to rectify what happened last weekend. What's the key thing that they got to rectify? Was it attitude?
Jimmy's a Roosters player now. He's probably getting around a Ferrari. He wouldn't be doing this, counting his cash.
Bugatti. Look, I think in reflection from that game, the Roosters' middle defence was, Marshall King had a field day out there, and
Trent Robinson said that after the game. We just got torn apart.
He really exploited any time there was a single marker. So any quick play the ball, single marker, Marshall King was going. They didn't seem to have an answer for that, whether or not they were underprepared or maybe just not thinking Marshall King had it in him. But they really came through the middle of them, and I think maybe perhaps there's some internal conversations there about, did we just rock up to Brisbane and just think we scrape through with a win, like we almost can't lose because they're not going to be good enough. Well, they surprised them, and I think I'd be wary if I was the Warriors, because you'd anticipate a very strong big response. But if you look at it, they'll likely be missing Victor Radley. He came off with a pretty serious concussion injury, and then
Lodge.
Lodge.
Yeah, he's fractured his.
He had a golf ball indentation on his cheekbone, 4 to 6
surgery.
apparently.
I think he's getting surgery tomorrow, so he's out.
Yeah. So there's some middle forwards that
Jared mightn't be back.
Yeah, there's some middle forwards that are missing. I did think they missed Jared. They missed his very presence out there, and his even in the dressing rooms that type of lift, and you don't want to let a man like him down, and him not being there, I think it really showed.
He sets the tempo for them, doesn't he, in terms of aggression and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of sympathy around the league, no doubt, for the Roosters' predicament this week. Absolutely. WTF moment. So we're going to introduce this every Monday. WTF, because we want to open ourselves up.
Charlie got a sound bite for this or something?
We will.
Yeah, next week.
We will. I threw it on
What's
him
he
with
been
about
doing?
10. No,
He's doing 100 podcasts a week.
I gave this to him about 10 minutes before we came in
right,
there with the
fair
full view of maybe getting on an acronym sponsor, like a BWS or a
that's clever.
BFC or a TPG or something like that. I don't know. But WTF moment, basically something we've noticed from the weekend, and on reflection, look back on, go, what the hell happened there? So I'll throw up the first one. Viliami Kikau and his kicking game. I dare say that is the last time we'll see him kicking in a while in a Dogs jersey. Now, not entirely his fault.
No.
Because Matt Burton got the ball and just went, here, Billy, have a go. Try and kick it on the hill. And he nearly did. It was, it summed up for me the Dogs' afternoon. It was there, the effort was there, but so was clunkiness.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't think it was Kikau's fault. He shouldn't have been past the ball on tackle 5.
Should have done a chip and chase, though. That would have been
yeah. But
did you ever kick the ball, Jimmy, or what?
A couple of times.
Did you?
Yeah. Little side footers.
Okay.
But not many.
I think he's playing for Everton. Yeah.
Not many. No. But look, on reflection, the Dogs game, they can't afford to put themselves in situations like that. So not only did it happen once, but it happened twice where they've kicked out on the full
and off the kick-off as well.
Yeah.
Matt Burton, so.
Is that the halves? That's the halves' fault, right?
Well, it's execution. It's execution, and it's game awareness. And the probably is, if you have that time again, you certainly don't pass it to Kikau on play 5. I mean, maybe they saw, you will have those reviews where you look at Eagle Cameron where you see the whole of the field, and perhaps Matt Burton will will justify his decision, thinking, "Well, I thought the run was on. I thought
he
I
thought they
we
were
had
stripped on that
yeah,
side,
they
so
were
he gave
stripped
it
on
to
that
him,
side." So that's maybe his justification for it, but this is something that happens internally, and also what the overriding goal of the Bulldogs' attack is, and Matt Burton still is a relatively young half, and look, the Bulldogs were. It was interesting to hear Cameron Ciraldo in the post game press conference, and he's not going to accept that. So I expect a response. But
I love Matty Burton as a player, but I cannot imagine he will ever have a game like that again in his career. He had a shocking game, Matt Burton.
Yeah, a lot went through him. Like he was in first receiver a lot. There was a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah,
as well.
He still didn't play well.
Now,
and as I said, he's a great player, fantastic player, Matt Burton. But they were all off really. I mean, Kickhouse.
Reed Marnie was the only one who stood up.
Yeah, Kickhouse. I can't imagine Kickhouse had a worse game than that in his career.
Yeah, but he got Cameron Ciraldo said he wasn't quite right.
Yeah, Olakau'atu, sorry.
Well, those two edge defenders for Manly were just it was like they hadn't been fed for a week. It was an extraordinary defensive display. Reedy, what's your WTF moment?
Look, I'm going to go back to Friday night as a Broncos fan, and I've got to say I enjoyed the frustration at Penrith, particularly the stoush after full time between Jerome Luai and Jamin Salmon. They went at it, the pair of them.
It was all right.
I loved it.
What's wrong with that?
Oh, it's just a moment. You don't often see it that candidly after a game. You see it during a game where guys rip into each other during a game. But after a game, two blokes going at it, and Salmon basically saying, I was too tired to get there. I think that's what he said. Is like words to that effect. I think he only played 20-odd minutes,
Push up
didn't
and support. Yeah.
So I'm a bit surprised. I can understand why Jerome was fired up at him.
You know what frustrated me? I heard some comments saying, "Oh, that's the type of conversation that should happen behind closed doors." I'm like, you obviously don't get the emotion of sport.
Players ripping into each other all the time on the field.
It does happen all the time, and it comes with the territory. Now we've got every game on TV, and there's microphones everywhere, and tens of multiple camera angles and stuff like that. But for someone to say, "Oh, that should be behind closed doors," like, what do you? Oh, sorry, Jerome. Can you just tell me this when you get inside?
Yeah, wait.
No, that's It's why we love it, and you know what? It shows that
Give
Jerome Luai cares.
Give us one that you've ripped.
I'll tell you what I know. You watch a lot of Premier League, like I do. You see them after games; they always cover their mouth up.
Yeah.
In case lip readers, right?
Yeah.
You can see what they're saying.
Yeah, same in NFL.
We need to see that.
Yeah.
Lip readers. No, we don't want lip readers. We're just out in the open. Go on, give us an old story, James, where you've either ripped into a teammate or a teammate's ripped into you and you've bit back.
Well, Mitch Brown is the one that springs to mind. We were playing in the 2014 final series, 18-0 up against Manly, and Mitch. We actually we had a little reunion not long ago, and we reenacted it. And I reenacted it being Mitch Brown, and just basically said, I'm not really sorry for spraying you. Everyone, you play the victim here, but look, all you need to do is just simply get off your left foot and, just turn the ball over and happy days. It doesn't happen, but instead you went for the corner. It was never on. And I make no apologies for giving you the spray of a lifetime.
And what did Mitch say to all this?
He was just like, okay.
Yes, boss.
Yeah. No, we were in the pub and actually, just recreated the sideline, and much to his amusement, I showed him what exactly he should be doing as a winger. So as a front rower, I went into the wing and simulated what to do, and but unfortunately, Mitch didn't have the foresight to see that.
Were you a regular sprayer, Jimmy, or did you save it?
Oh, I mean, at different points, and it depends who you're speaking to as well. I think like me and Mitch had a good enough relationship, and I was pretty amped up, and at that particular moment, and there's different players that will respond, and I think you have those, like me and Josh Reynolds would be at each other all the time, but we had a relationship where we were comfortable with that, and he was he could give as good as he got, and so could I. I think that's and looking at Salmon and Luai, I imagine they have that relationship where that's some people, friendships are over forever over a little argument like that. I've seen that happen. But for some, next day or even just back in the sheds later on, it's like, what are you doing tonight?
Yeah.
Fair enough. What was your WTF moment?
My WTF moment was the Cameron Munster compound dislocation. Wow. So for me, I get it how he just cracks on and keeps going and is involved in the next two tackles, but
Is it adrenaline that you don't even know it's happening?
Instinct. I mean, the pain is still there.
Yeah.
Yes, you get a shot of adrenaline, but it's just that instinct to just carry on. What's next?
Yeah.
And for me, it's not the fact that he came back on. It's the fact that he just continued on with his job despite the bone sticking out of the skin, despite the level of pain. It's just, I'll just keep going. And I think it's obviously it's a fine line between not treating injuries seriously. Obviously, we've got some, there's some headlines being made with, head injury assessments and players wanting to continue on. But with something like this, it's just not seen in many other sports. Like I'm a big football or soccer fan, and I'd love to see any Premier League player continue on with a
compound fracture,
dislocation. It just I reckon genuinely they'd be off on a stretcher.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
With a
Reddy's
finger
played
injury.
NSL. I love my football, obviously, as well. Soccer, whatever you want to call it. If there's a compound fracture of a toenail, a football is not ending up. Yeah. It's extraordinary. I'm just trying to get into my head about, because we watch, and this is the one thing I reckon a lot of fans don't get, and myself included, is what a player is not thinking out there, and they're not thinking things that ordinarily watching without adrenaline, without your heart rate's up a bit. You don't appreciate like going into contact and it not hurting. It just looks like everything hurts, but out there it's a different story.
That's it. You default to carry on, and also Cameron Munster, he didn't feel the pain and see the bone and go, I'm going to go and sit myself on the wing for 5 minutes and just stay out of play. The next two tackles, he was in amongst it.
Got involved.
We went in the sheds after the game actually, and we were chatting to him for ages because he was in a pretty good mood, Cam, and had tissue over the finger. He said, "You want to have a look at it?" We said, "Oh, he gives us a look." Took the tissue away. The bone was still out of the skin, and it was needled up. And he said he was more worried about the needle. He hates needles. He said, "I was more worried about the needles, getting the needles at half
Wouldn't
time."
he be more worried about his golf grip? Because he loves his golf.
I said that to him.
Cam?
I said, "Your golf, you shop with your golf." He said, "Yeah, won't be playing for a month or so."
Gone for a month. So he said in the sheds after it, I remember on TV, he goes, "Yeah, I'll be right next week."
Yeah.
And then 24 hours later, it comes out that he's 3 to 4 weeks perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's the attitude of the players. It's like, no, I'll be right.
And he'll probably be back within. Well, they said 2 to 3 initially. He'll be back at 2, maybe 1.
Yeah, I reckon if it was a grand final next week,
he plays.
He'd probably cut it off and say, "I'll play."
Yeah, it's been done before.
You blokes are mad, Jimmy.
Yeah,
you're mad.
Well, I think it's mad not to be like that.
Yeah, that's true.
That was our WTF moments for this week. Reedy, over to you. You were sideline at Leichhardt Oval yesterday. I caught a sight of on television. We caught a sight of the Tigers coaching box, and so much talk about this, about how it's going to work with Tim Sheens, Benji Marshall, Robbie Farah, and it just looked very full, that coach's box. Didn't it? There was a few bodies in there, and it looked like there were a few Chiefs as well. What was the feeling at the ground after the game when the Tigers obviously handed it over to the Gold Coast Titans for their first win?
Tim was pretty optimistic, to be fair. He wasn't too deflated in the press conference after the game. A lot of people were. Obviously, there had a big crowd there, and a lot of them left with 10 to go. And it was a bit of an anticlimax because, obviously this is a brand sparkling new era with Benji and Tim and Robbie, and we all expected. They all talked about how they'd spent the preseason focusing on their attack, and they'd done a lot of work, and they were going to be a bit unconventional and do things differently. And it was more of the same from the Tigers. It was a lot of what we saw from them last year. A lot of drop ball, a lot of mistakes, a lot of getting in their own way. It's early, obviously, but really disappointing. And a lot of, you could tell you could feel the disappointment in the air amongst those fans because they'd come to see this, as I said, this brand new era, and they went away deflated. Again.
Familiar feeling.
Yes.
Familiar feeling. You were in transit, weren't you, Jimmy? So not across the game.
No, but this really, it's a game that, the Tigers and especially their fans would have thought this is a winnable one.
Yeah.
Just to start the season, the Gold Coast Titans, there's not much expected from them. This is a real winnable one, and we want to get off to a really good start. It's important that you win these type of games. With all due respect to the Titans, so they'll be really disappointed. And I think sometimes round one there can be an overreaction, and even the talk of is it right in the coach's box? Well, every team has, you look at the Dolphins and they've basically got one of the best coaches going around in the assistant boxes in Christian Wolf. But it's not, is there too many cooks spoiling the broth? That question isn't being asked because it's based on results. And then even the analysis of Appy Coruscant dropping to the bench. I mean, Penrith did it.
I didn't have a great issue with that. A lot of people are making a lot out of that.
But some
A
people
lot of
did
people
really.
are, yeah. But you've got to understand, Appy had a calf problem in the pre-season. He missed their final trial.
Yeah, exactly.
And I understand why Tim did it. Yeah, but I would say this. If Appy's on the opening 10 minutes when they had 90% of the ball, they'd probably walk away with more than 2 points. But I can understand why Tim did that.
Yeah.
Given the pre-season Appy's had. And it's a long season.
Yeah.
It's one game.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater yet if you're a Tigers fan. You've still got time to turn it around. But it was just disappointing.
And there's a guy coming into their team pretty soon that can grab a game and a club by the scruff of the neck.
Johnny Bateman.
You rate him that highly, Jim?
Mate, look what he did at Canberra.
Yeah.
Obviously it was a team effort, but
So I've heard a story.
He bounces in and he just goes, I'm going to drag everyone up here.
So,
and he can, mate, he's, talk about people being mad. That lad's not wide upright.
Yeah.
He really isn't.
I was just about to say, I heard a story through Warren Smith. He went to Tigers training and they're talking to a few people and they said, when you know how they hold the pads in contact, practice in contact, and John Bateman lines up, and he's not the biggest guy. He's no Nelson, so to speak. But every time he hits the pads, you can feel him through the pad, like his elbows and his shoulders and everything like that. He's just like his power to weight ratio must be through the roof. Or something.
He's so unorthodox as well. He bounces around almost like a middleweight boxer. Just that on his feet all the time and comes against the grain. But like his mentality is what sets him apart. He just will not. He refuses to lose. He's the ultimate competitor. He'll take anyone on. Like again, you look at size wise, like he'll want to mix it with the Olaquatus, with the Kickhouse. Like he'll want to take them on.
You imagine a guy like that when he's 13 years of age in the high school lunchtime games. You're just taking. There would have been fatalities everywhere.
Well, poor old Batty didn't go to school, so no one needed to worry about that.
I'm not sure if he'll play this week, though. We asked him about it after the game. He said, look, depends on how he is during the week, whether we can get him up to speed. I'll tell you what, if he does play, him and Jackson Hastings got a bit of history. They don't get on, and they're playing Newcastle.
Okay.
So Jackson Hastings against his whole club as well, so that'll be something special. Keep an eye on that one.
I think, you look, the Tigers and their staff and the sports scientists will have the plan, but Bateman's the type of guy that you just want to throw it. I think I remember hearing a story when he was down at Canberra and Stuart says, I'll put you off the bench, and he's like, what use am I off the bench? Like, like I'm not going to make it, like, just throw me in.
Yeah.
And we all saw what he did there.
Well, it's time for this now.
Read about it. Read about it. Reedy's Mail.
Mike's yours.
Well, I want to talk Joe Swalihi. Because
Yeah.
big news this morning. Joe Swalihi took up his option with the Roosters. So he's committed to the Roosters for next year. Kept rugby at bay. But I'll tell you what, this story is going to simmer away because the issue for the Roosters really isn't next year with Joe Swalihi. The issue is 2025 and 2027. 2025 British Irish Lions Tour, 2027 World Cup. So I don't think Joe Swalihi was ever leaving rugby league next year. He was always going to stay. He loves the Roosters. He loves being there. He's really well paid. The issue for the Roosters is going to be when we get to this situation next year, and he's got an option again for 2025. And I think he'll have to take up by about round 10 next year. So that first two months of next year, that's when we've got to keep an eye on the Joe Swalihi story.
Smart play from him and his management.
Well, rugby are already, they're circling him, they're circling Tola Kula at Manly, and Manly are trying to extend Kula at the moment to keep rugby at bay. But Swalihi's he's the big one. He's the big fish they want.
Did you see, by the way, just to jump in about who Rugby Australia might be targeting, did you see that interview with Eddie Jones and Gus?
No.
They did one on Stan, and out of nowhere, Gus goes, who are the rugby league players you've admired? And he's gone back over the old ones like Andrew Johns. And out of nowhere, he goes, Cam Murray. He's really good too.
Oh, yeah. I think he's locked up, though, Cam, long term. And Cam's more of I feel like Cam's more wedded to rugby league. I mean, Swalihi's played a bit of rugby, played Australian schoolboys. And he's one of these. I think he's one of these new age guys who aspires big, right? The idea of being able to play at a World Cup and the British and Irish Lions tour for a rugby union player, that's huge. People underestimate how big that is in the world of rugby union. The British Irish Lions. I think that only happen once every 12 years or something. Don't
Once
they?
every 12 years.
Yeah. It is over here to Australia, and that's what rugby's got up its sleeve. And I'm really grateful that he's just staying in our sport.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal athlete, and he's an incredible talent. I think it's credit to the Roosters for keeping him. But this is going to be, an annual story, isn't it? And credit to him because that's what his talent
allows,
and that's the situation that his talent has put him in, where he can just do it year by year, and also. He sacrifices that long-term stability because he is willing to back himself.
I could see him just bouncing back, a bit like Sonny Bill. Bouncing
100%.
back and forth between the two sports.
Do you reckon the two haven't talked about it either?
Well, they probably have at some point, but hopefully, let's just appreciate him.
Yeah, appreciate him.
Next year.
While he's in our sport, while he's lighting up the NRL, he's an incredible talent.
What else is in your huge
a bit
mailbox?
of Dragons. It's a big week for the Dragons because they're mid-table. They had a win in round one, the Dragons.
Brilliant win on the weekend.
Yeah. But it's a big week for them on a couple of fronts. And, the main front is Talatau Moan. They should know this week whether he's allowed to play in round one.
Mm-hmm.
If he's allowed to play, it's obviously an extra body and a really good footballer becomes available to them. But 6 is a bit of an issue for them. There was a lot of talk that Jack Bird would play 5'8" in the pre-season, that Jack Bird would play alongside Ben Hunt. But the mail I'm getting is that Jaden Sullivan will be the 5'8" in round one. Young kid Jimmy, you've had a little bit to do with him. He's had some injury. I think he's had a hamstring problem. He played in the pre-season, I think, off the bench. But the word out of Wollongong is that he will play alongside Ben Hunt in the halves in round one. Jack Bird will play lock.
Yeah, we've seen him a couple of times play for the Dragons. Jaden Sullivan, he's got such a huge potential, and I really like him as well. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. Yeah. Very talented individual, but a smart one as well. That's willing to learn and work hard at his game. And I think if he gets an opportunity, I think he'll take it with both hands. And Amone may come back. I think he. If he is allowed to play, he'd take into that 6. But I think Sullivan will cement a spot on the bench, and he'll be that guy that Griffin will throw on to break the game wide open, especially as fatigue sets in. Perhaps play a little bit of 9 or something like that.
Would he complement Ben Hunt, Sullivan? What sort of player is he? I haven't seen enough.
Look, I think he's more of a natural 7. He is more of a natural 7 than a 6, but he's got speed to burn and a real smart footballer as well. So he can read a game, but. His running game is where his real strength is.
I like Jack Bird at lock too. I think that's the best spot for Jack Bird.
Well, for me, I'd have DeBellin at lock.
Oh, DeBellin, that's true.
Yeah.
Would you put Jack Bird? Sanders?
On an edge?
Perhaps on an edge.
Okay.
Jack Bird's the type of guy that can play anywhere and have an impact on the game.
Jimmy, Reedy, thank you for that. That was the Monday Scrum. Thanks to Triple M.